Hi everyone, Chris Natzke here with Black Belt Leadership Speaking and Coaching with your Mind of a Champion Tip of the Week live on Facebook. Today what I want to do is talk to you about the idea of perfectionism and how it holds us back and really helps us or actually hinders us from dealing with what's really possible in our lives. And I don't know about you, but I'm going to be really upfront here and maybe a little vulnerable that I am a recovering perfectionist. And oftentimes when I do these blogs, of course I want to provide service for those that listen to it, and I'm so thankful for that. But it's also a way for me to process things in my own life, either that I've dealt with in the past or that I'm dealing with now as a human being and as a leader. And for me in my own life, perfectionism is something that has served me at times, but it's also really held me back when I really stepped back and started to look at it. And perfectionism for me was something that was kind of natural to do. I grew up in a household where my father, although he was in our home, he was alcoholic. And so you never knew what kind of a situation you were going to come home to. So for me, being the perfect son, the perfect athlete, the perfect student was a way of drawing attention away from all that chaos that was happening at home, and it allowed me to stabilize things. And as long as I could be perfect, things were going to be okay. And perfectionism helped me in my life too. I was able to be an athlete. Hi Beth, thanks for joining us. I was able to be an athlete that went off to college. I got a great job corporately. I trained in martial arts for 4 decades and had it become my life in terms of my livelihood. And perfectionism worked until it didn't. Let me say that again. Perfectionism worked until it didn't, until I started to find how it was holding me back from taking the appropriate risks or really even being the person I was meant to be because I was afraid of making a mistake. And in fact, this whole thing, this whole idea around me teaching martial arts and following my dream back in 1995 almost didn't happen because of my fear of what if I would fail. Because it was 1995 and I was getting ready to open up my martial arts studio, and I had done all the prerequisites, all the work to make it happen, and it should have been one of the most exciting times of my life. But actually it was one of the most horrifying and terrifying times of my life. Because what was happening in my mind is, since I had never done it before and I had never succeeded in it and I didn't have the perfect plan, constantly in my mind were these ideas of, what if I fail? How can I leave this great corporate job? I've got a wife and 2 kids, not 2 wives, but a wife and 2 kids that I have to take care of. What happens if I fail? In fact, most of the time what I would do is I wasn't focusing on what I could do. Hey, Rob Martin, good to have you join me, my friend. I wasn't focusing on what I could do. I was focusing on what the fallout would be is if I failed. What would happen if I failed? And it became paralyzing. And it all culminated with one event. This was several months before I was going to get ready to open up my studio. I'd already signed the lease on the building that I was going to be housed in. And I was still working for my company, and we had a team meeting that day. It was going to be a full day where the entire team got together. And one of the things that was coming present for me as I was dealing with this anxiety and this fear is I was starting to have panic attacks. Now, I don't know if you've ever experienced a panic attack, but generally what experts will say is that perfectionism and fear, they're together like this. And so what would happen is the result is of me not knowing how to deal with this energy is it would go into panic. The room would start to close in. I got tunnel vision. My chest would get tight. I couldn't breathe. And it's one of the most petrifying things that you can go through. Well, anyway, I'm at this meeting, and no one except for one person in the office knows I'm going to be making this move. None of my bosses, so I'm hiding this, I'm nervous about it, whatever, and I go into a panic attack. Now, I'm able to make it through to lunch, but by the time we get to the restaurant, I've had it, and I go to my boss and I ask him if I can leave because I'm not feeling well, and he sends me on my way. Well, I have enough presence of mind that day to get myself to a gas station and drive up to a payphone. Yes, I'm dating myself, folks. I was a payphone. There were no cell phones at that time. And I get on the phone and I call my church because I want to speak to a minister because I know I need some help. So I get the go-ahead. One of my favorite ministers, Dr. Marjorie, is there. They tell me to come into the office. So I take the 30-minute ride to her office. And as I get there and I sit on her couch, I'm still in my panic attack, and I'm literally rocking in my chair as I'm telling her about all the fear that I have of failure when I'm going to open up this martial arts school and all the terrible things that can happen. And the next thing I do is I ask her if I can sit down on the floor because I need some space. Then the next thing I know is I'm laying on the floor because I need to have some comfort. And when you know, within a couple of minutes, I'm in the fetal position. and I'm rolling uncontrollably on her office floor because I'm in so much fear of what happens if I fail. Now, God bless Dr. Marjorie. She has the presence of mind to take me through. She calls my wife at the time. She tells her about what's going on, and she gets me cleaned up and on my way. And the story could end there, because I actually had a martial art testing that night where I'm taking my students through the paces, and quite honestly, folks, I ran it flawlessly. When I was in my element, nothing could stop me. But as soon as that testing was done, I went right back into panic. So much so that my wife at the time took me to a local hospital here in Denver, Swedish hospital. And I was so anxious and so out of my element and so out of control, and my heart was racing so much they had to sedate me, and I spent the night in the emergency room. And in the morning when I woke up, they took my vitals and they were getting ready to send me home because I was everything had stabilized. And the doctor came up and told me, he said, "Chris, when you came in here last night, your heart was racing at such an abnormal rate, so fast, that if you wouldn't have been such a well-conditioned athlete, you would have gone into cardiac arrest." That's what fear and that's what perfectionism can do. Now, I was able to get through that time in my life. I had great family, friends, medical professionals, mental health professionals that helped me through it. But it doesn't mean that perfectionism has left my life. I still have had to deal with it. I had to understand that how the perfect competitor could lose in the finals of the national championships in 1998. I had to deal with the fact that the perfect husband would get divorced. I had to deal with the fact that the perfect business owner would go through financial struggles and almost lose his business. It's something that I've had to deal with for my entire life. And my thought is it probably might be the same for you. So what do we do with this? What do we do with this? Well, I've come up with 4 things that I do in my life that helps me move through this idea of being perfect and not having to be perfect in order to move through life. And I want to share these with you now. And that story that I just shared with you is not one that I share a lot, but I wanted you to hear it because you might be in a position right now where being perfect is keeping you back from what's truly possible in your life. So what are these 4 steps? The first one is to, it's not perfect because I don't know my script here, is to understand the difference between excellence and perfection. Okay? There's nothing wrong with being the very best we can be. But what I needed to do is understand that my performance wasn't directly connected to my self-worth. You know, if I were to get a result, it didn't mean that I was a good person or a bad person. It just meant I had a result. Now, striving for the best we can be incredibly empowering, incredibly awesome for us in our lives, but we can't make it about who we are as a person, right? So what happens is when we're dealing with excellence and we're excited to move through to those efforts, but when we're dealing with perfectionism, nothing is ever good enough and nothing ever serves us. So what are you doing in your life? Are you being driven by excellence or are you being driven by perfectionism? Number 2, I found, doggone it, it's okay to laugh at yourself. It's okay for me to laugh at myself. Life is funny. We're going to come up with mistakes. We're going to make errors. And when we're able to sit back and laugh at ourselves and take those things in jest, not only is it healing inside of ourselves, but it actually opens up our creativity. When we're relaxed and we're happy and we're just moving through life in that way, when we have challenges, it allows us to tap into our creativity. And when we do it and we laugh at ourselves, we give people permission to do the same in their lives as well. So where do you have an opportunity to laugh at yourself? In your imperfections. Number three is the idea that look at errors as mistakes and not as the end of the world. One of my favorite authors is Dr. Bernard Beckwith, and he talks in his books, Spiritual Liberation. He makes the connection between making errors and being on the set of a movie. And so, you know, the guy's there with the clapper, boom, and he says, scene 1, take 1, whatever, and they do their scene. And if somebody messes up a line, the director says cut, and they just do a retake. Think about that. They do a retake. And they do a retake because of the mistake until they don't have to take it anymore. And so where do you have an opportunity to look at your mistakes as simply retakes? And if you don't think that this works, I mean, the guy that created penicillin, he became as an accident, a mistake in the Petri jar. The guy that created the Post-it notes, that came as a result of the adhesive he was working on at 3M wasn't working. And if you look at Edison, he had 10,000 mistakes before he created the light bulb. So the idea there is not if you have the courage to succeed, but you have the courage to continue to make mistakes until you do. So where do you have an opportunity for that in your life? And finally is be vulnerable. Be vulnerable. Understand that being perfect makes, or not being perfect, being imperfect makes you more relatable to the people that are in your life and the people that you lead. I'm going to tell a little story here as I end this video. Years ago, I was on the phone with my mom. My mom's an amazing woman. I've talked about her in the past. And she's the one person that I can really vent to and, you know, kind of, oh, things are not going well. And so I called her up one day and I was venting about the fact that my new speaking business wasn't taking off the way that I wanted it to. And she, of course, as a great mom, listened to me, you know, complain about all the things that were going wrong in my life. And finally, once I got exhausted all that, she stopped and she said, so tell me something. You want to be one of those motivational speakers, right? And I said, well, yes, I do. She said, well, do you think that if your life is perfect and you never make a mistake and you never have a challenge, anyone is ever going to listen to you? I couldn't say anything. I mean, she hit it totally on the head. When I was going to be vulnerable and I had mistakes and I could share those with people, that was going to make me more relatable. So where do you have a place to do that in your own life? And I'm going to end this video because I'm going to go out on a limb here. And normally, if I were to have a new program, a new coaching program I was going to do, I would spend weeks planning it, and I would make sure it was just perfect before I launched it. But I was just with my good friend Doug, my coach Doug McGee, and he challenged me on something. He said, hey, you're talking about imperfection. Why don't you do a program on imperfection? I said, doggone it, that's a great idea. So I'm here to announce that I'm going to be creating this program, and we're going to start it in mid-October, October 14th, and it's going to go something like this. I don't even know if this is the name yet. It's not perfect, but it's going to be like, if you're practicing perfectionism, you're selfish. Because when you're doing that, you're not allowing all your gifts to shine. And what it's going to include is it's going to be an 8-week program. It's going to include my online program that you're going to get as part of it. We're going to have weekly group coaching sessions I'm going to choose 8 people to be in this program. We're going to get together 8 times for 8 weeks for all of us together to work through this program, work through how we allow perfectionism to hold us back. You're going to have 4 one-on-one coaching calls with me as well. And get this, you're going to have the opportunity to choose something that you're going to fail at. How's that? So that's what I've got going on this, and I'll be telling you more about it as I create this, but this is not at all perfected. I'm just going on a limb because, heck, I'm going to model this for you, and I'd love you to be part of this journey because I know that when you're able to move through perfection and your perfectionism, that's when you can really tune into what's possible in your life. In fact, as Leslie, Doug's wife, just gave me this, is life, what did she say? Life does not have to be perfect to be wonderful. So how does that work in your life? And are you ready to take that step? So this has been Chris Natzke from Black Belt Leadership Speaking and Coaching. I look forward to talking to you. If you're interested in the coaching program, just private message me or reach out to me in email, reach out to me on my website, chrisnatzke.com. But go ahead and private message me if you're interested, and we'll see you next time on the Mind of a Champion Tip of the Week.